There is a moment most men never talk about. Not with their doctor, not with their partner, not even with their closest friends. It is the moment when a man quietly notices that something is different, something has shifted, and he cannot quite explain it, but he fears it. Maybe it happened gradually, maybe it seemed to arrive overnight. Either way, there was a point when he looked at himself and thought, this is not how it used to be. If you are watching this video, there is a good chance you know exactly what I am describing. My name is Dr. Katharina Neumann, and over the past 2 decades, I have sat across from thousands of men who came to my office with this exact feeling. Men who were not panicking, men who were not in crisis, men who simply knew that something was no longer quite right, and who had been carrying that knowledge alone for far too long. What I want to do today is have an honest conversation about what is actually happening. Not with complicated medical language, not with alarming statistics, just a straightforward, respectful conversation between a doctor and a patient. Because the men I have helped the most were not the ones who waited. They were the ones who decided to understand what was going on and then did something about it. So let us start at the beginning. Most men I speak with describe it the same way. It did not happen all at once. There was no single morning when everything changed. Instead, it was a slow, quiet drift. A little less energy here, a little less interest there. A night here and there where sleep did not come easily. A morning where getting up felt heavier than it used to. And somewhere in the middle of all of this, the intimacy changed too. The desire was not what it was. The motivation was not there the way it had been. And instead of talking about it, most men did what men tend to do. They told themselves it was just stress, just tiredness, just getting older. I understand that instinct completely. It is a protective response. But here is what I have learned from working with men for 20 years. The men who tell themselves it is just age and leave it at that, they are often the ones who feel worse 2 or 3 years later. And the reason is not that aging is inevitable. The reason is that they missed something important their body was trying to tell them. Stay with me, because in a few minutes I am going to explain what that signal usually is, and it is not what most men expect. Let me paint you a picture. A man is 54 years old. He is in reasonably good health. He exercises occasionally, he does not smoke. He takes a tablet for his blood pressure, which his doctor tells him is well managed. On the surface, everything looks fine. But for the past year and a half, he has noticed something he has not mentioned to anyone. His desire has faded. Not completely, but noticeably. Where there used to be a natural pull, a natural interest, now there is mostly quiet. He tells himself he is tired. He tells himself work has been stressful. He tells himself his partner understands. But underneath all of that, there is a different kind of discomfort. The feeling that something important has gone missing. And the worry, one he would never say out loud, that it might not come back. I have sat with this man many times, different faces, different names, but the same story. And what most of these men do not know, what almost no one has told them, is that what they are experiencing is often not primarily about age at all. Here is something I want you to think about. When men come to me and describe a loss of desire, a drop in energy, a growing sense of flatness, the first thing they assume is that their body is simply winding down, that this is the natural direction things go after a certain age. And I understand why they think that, because that is the story we tell ourselves as a culture. Men slow down, things change, it happens to everyone. But there is a problem with that story. It is not always true. What looks like a natural decline is very often something else entirely. It is the body responding to something physical, something that has been building quietly for a while, and expressing that response in ways that feel like aging, but are actually signals. The difference matters enormously. Because if it is simply age, there is nothing to understand and nothing to change. But if it is a signal, then understanding what the signal means is the first step toward feeling genuinely better. And in a moment, I am going to tell you what that signal is most commonly connected to. But first, I want to make sure you understand something important about how the body works, because it will make everything else I say much clearer. Your body does not experience things in isolation. When one system is under pressure, other systems feel it too. This is something that sounds obvious when you say it out loud, but most of us do not actually live as if it were true. We think of our sleep as separate from our energy. We think of our mood as separate from our physical health. We think of our desire as separate from everything else. But the body does not work that way. The way you sleep affects how your hormones behave the next day. The way your blood flows affects how every organ in your body functions, including the ones involved in sexual desire and response. The stress you carry in your chest and shoulders affects your nervous system, which affects your hormones, which affects your energy, which affects your mood, which affects your interest in intimacy. Everything is connected. And this is why a man who thinks he simply has low desire is often actually a man whose entire system is quietly telling him something. He has been interpreting one signal as a singular problem, when in reality it is one expression of something broader. This is not alarming, but it is important, and it means the solution is rarely as simple as one pill or one supplement or one change. It means understanding the whole picture. Let me tell you what that picture usually looks like. In my experience, the men who come to me with these concerns, the loss of desire, the fading energy, the quiet sense that something is off, tend to share a few things in common. They sleep less deeply than they used to. Not necessarily fewer hours, but the quality has changed. They wake more easily. They feel less rested in the morning. This is not just an inconvenience. Deep restorative sleep is when the body does a significant amount of its hormonal work. When that sleep is disrupted consistently over months and years, the body's ability to regulate itself begins to shift. They carry more tension than they acknowledge. Not dramatic stress, not crisis-level pressure, just the steady, low-grade weight of responsibility, of being the person who handles things, of never quite switching off. This kind of tension has a direct effect on the body's chemistry. It suppresses certain hormones. It keeps the nervous system in a state of low alert. And over time, that state becomes the new normal. They have made certain assumptions about what is changeable and what is not. They have drawn a line, somewhere around 50 or 55 or 60, and decided that what is happening on this side of the line is simply how things are now. And that is the assumption I want to gently challenge. Because the men I have seen make real, lasting changes were the ones who questioned that assumption. Not dramatically, not with some radical overhaul of their lives, but quietly, thoughtfully, one decision at a time. I want to stop here for a moment and ask you something. How long have you been aware of this change in yourself? For most men who are watching this, the honest answer is longer than they would like to admit. Months, perhaps. For some, a year or more. And during that time, the most common response has been a kind of patient waiting. Waiting for it to pass. Waiting for things to go back to how they were. I understand that response, but I also need to be honest with you about something. In my experience, it does not tend to pass on its own. Not because the situation is hopeless, it is not, but because the body does not spontaneously resolve something it is actively responding to. If the underlying conditions do not change, the body continues to respond to them. The good news, and I want you to hear this clearly, is that the underlying conditions are almost always addressable. The path forward is not complicated, it is not extreme, it does not require anything dramatic, but it does require something most men find surprisingly difficult. It requires paying attention to yourself. Actually paying attention. Not in a worried way, not in a hypochondriac way, just with the same thoughtfulness that you would apply to anything else in your life that mattered to you. Because you matter, and this matters. Let me tell you about something that almost no one talks about, but that I consider one of the most important things I can share with a man who is sitting in front of me with these concerns. There is a pattern I see again and again in men who are struggling with desire and energy and their general sense of flatness. They have gradually, often without noticing, begun to live slightly smaller. They do less of the physical activity they used to enjoy. Not because they made a decision to stop, just because inertia took over. They socialize a little less. They take on fewer new things. They find themselves choosing comfort and routine over engagement and challenge. And what happens in the body when we live this way is that certain systems begin to operate at lower capacity. Not because they are broken, but because they are not being stimulated. The body is designed to respond to demand. When the demand drops, the output drops. And when the output drops across multiple systems at the same time, energy, motivation, hormonal activity, desire, it can feel like a fundamental change in who you are. But it is not. It is a response. And responses can change. Here is what I have seen work consistently for the men in my care. The first thing is sleep. Not more sleep necessarily, but better sleep. The kind of deep, uninterrupted rest that actually allows the body to do its overnight work. This is not about rigid bedtime routines or eliminating everything you enjoy in the evenings. It is about taking sleep seriously as something that has a direct impact on how you feel, how you function, and yes, how you experience desire. Small things matter here. Consistency in timing, less screen light in the hour before bed, a room that is cool and quiet. These feel minor, they are not. The second thing is movement. Again, not dramatic, not marathon training. Simply regular, sustained physical activity that asks something of the cardiovascular system. Walking is enough, cycling is enough, anything that gets the heart working and the blood moving, consistently, most days of the week, begins to shift the body's internal chemistry in ways that touch almost everything, including desire. The third thing, and this one surprises men most often, is connection. Not just physical connection, emotional connection. The experience of being genuinely seen and heard by another person. This has a measurable effect on the body. It affects hormone levels. It affects nervous system regulation. It affects the general sense of being alive and engaged with life. Many men have allowed this kind of connection to drift, quietly, gradually, without making any decision about it. And that drift shows up in ways they do not immediately connect to loneliness, but that are, at their root, related to it. I want to come back to something I said earlier because I think it is worth sitting with. The men who do best, not just physically, but in terms of feeling like themselves again, are the ones who stop waiting for things to change on their own and start paying attention. That does not mean obsessing. It does not mean turning inward constantly. It means noticing, being willing to ask, what is my body trying to tell me? What has changed? What can I actually do? And then, and this is the step most men skip, actually talking to someone. Whether that is a doctor, a partner, a close friend, or simply themselves, honestly, without the usual reassurances. Because here is something I have observed over 20 years of practice. The problem is almost never as serious as men fear. But the silence around the problem, the habit of not talking about it, not acknowledging it, not taking it seriously, that silence is where the real damage happens. Not just to physical health, to relationships, to the sense of self, to the quality of a man's daily experience. So if there is one thing I want you to take from this conversation, it is this. What you are feeling is not a verdict on who you are or who you are becoming. It is information. Your body is speaking to you in the way bodies speak, through symptoms, through changes, through the quiet persistence of something that refuses to be ignored. Listen to it, not with fear, not with shame, with curiosity. Because on the other side of that curiosity, on the other side of actually understanding what is happening and doing something about it, is a version of your life that feels more like you again. I have watched men get there, not through miracles, not through anything dramatic, through the simple, powerful act of deciding to take themselves seriously. You can do that, starting today. And in my next video, I am going to talk about something specific that many men in this situation overlook entirely. Something that, once understood, changes how they approach almost everything else. You will not want to miss it.